Hi, Annette. How are you doing?
Hi, Bob. I'm good.
I think we've got everybody on. We've got about a minute to go. Looks like all the council is on. All right, 5:30. Welcome everyone to the June 4th regular City Council meeting. Bessie Jo, would you please do the formal roll call for the record?
Mayor Giles,
Here?
Councilmember Holmes,
Here.
Councilmember Nielsen,
Yes.
Councilmember Machese,
Present.
Councilmember Sowers.
Here.
Thank you, everyone. At this point, we will stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Would someone please, on the council, please make a motion to approve the agenda?
This is Tom. I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
Thank
I
you,
second.
Mike.
Go ahead.
Who seconded?
Melanie.
Melanie, thank you. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. We'll move to the consent agenda. Would someone make a motion to approve the consent agenda, please?
This is Melanie. I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Thank you, Ronnie. Thank you, Mike. Motion has been made and seconded to approve the consent agenda as published in our agenda. May I have a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Holmes,
Yes.
Councilmember Machese,
Yes.
Mayor Giles,
Yes.
Councilmember Nielsen,
Yes.
Councilmember Sowers.
Yes.
Thank you, council. The motion passes. The agenda is approved and the consent agenda is approved. We are now moving into the general public comment time, and I believe we read the comments if they were submitted before 3 p.m. today. Did we receive any general comments for tonight's meeting?
I received no comments.
Okay, thank you, Bessie Jo. Then we'll move into the next part of our meeting, which is the proclamation for the 11th day of July, Humanitarian Wood Work Day. And I believe that Dave Holland is going to give us a quick summary and briefing on this topic. Is there anyone on the staff that could check to see if either Mr. Holland or Linda Arbach are on the call or on the Teams platform?
Yeah, I'm checking right now. They both received.
Hello?
Hold on just 1 second. Linda, are you there?
This is me on the phone, and Dave. I've got Dave on my other landline because neither of us can get in on our computers.
So Linda, this is Bob Giles, the mayor. The council and I are able, all of us on council are able to hear you really well. And we do have a really nice summary of what this proclamation's all about. But would you like to just hit some highlights and brief us, and then we will approve the proclamation?
Okay, now just a minute. Let me be sure Dave's on the line too. Dave, did you hear that? You need to call in, like right now. Do you have the number? It's 208-634-8900. Okay, I'm going to hang up this phone. No. Excuse us, technology. So, Mr. Mayor and City Council, today, we, being the executive board at Heartland Hunger, met with Eddie down at the proposed site. And I guess, to some degree, what we're doing right now is moot because we all agreed it wouldn't be possible for us to hold the event down there. I think you all are aware of all the work that's going on down at the site. And so where we are, can you hear me okay?
Yes, you're coming through really well. Continue on, please.
Okay. So where we are is we four board members are trying to figure out what potential alternatives we might possibly try to facilitate. Mostly, although we all admit that Woodstock is a lot of fun and it's a great big party, the real purpose, of course, is to provide wood to those in our community who need help. And we've been doing it for 10 years. I think you're probably aware of that.
Yes.
So we're kind of back to square one a little bit. Now, since we met this morning, Derek Williamson, who's on our executive board, he talked again with Kurt. I've known Kurt since he was a kid. What's his last name? Anyway, Kurt. And yes, right. So, as I say, in discussing about how we were going to, which we thought the discussion would be about what safety measures that we're proposing and, collaborating to hold the event on July 11th, we're back to ground zero, I think, or maybe not quite ground zero, but we're certainly back to a starting point because it's obvious that we can't hold the event there.
So, are you thinking that you'll be able to find another area and maybe we should pass this proclamation that we would be able, between now and July 11th, that your group and the city would be able to work together to find a alternate location?
Well, I think that's probably an excellent idea. And in fact, I think perhaps it's already starting to happen already. Because that seems, again, unless actually, well, we really did quite a bit of research and have quite a bit of endorsement in the community and with our partners, including when we first talked about it, the city, to continue. So I think that makes all the sense in the world. We're right now maybe just a tad bit discouraged because it's, as you know, it's there's a lot of coordination that goes into doing it, and the site has worked so well. We've been spoiled by being able to do that for 10 years there. But yes, we're not going to give up just yet.
Okay, go
So,
ahead. And
Mayor, Kurt Wolf is on the line, and so if you'd like to, he could maybe help fill in some of the information that Ms. Arbach is referring to regarding Riverfront Park, if that's helpful.
that'll be really helpful. Thank you, Kurt.
Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes.
So Riverfront, with all between the jump base and the taxiway projects, Riverfront Park has a lot of construction staging. And even if we could shift things around and make space down there, there's a lot of truck traffic in and out of there at the moment. I was on the phone earlier today with Scott Corkle with IDL, and he is going to look into the possibility of utilizing that IDL 80 acres, a portion of that. We have a few options there. Some of that property is also going to be used for staging for some of the airport work, for stockpiling of materials. I didn't realize that until today. I think that's phase 2, the taxiway project. But Scott is going to get back to me tomorrow, most likely, on the possibility of using a portion of the back half of that along the road, which could actually work out well to spread people out as it relates to the status of the pandemic. So we're still working hard. I was on the phone with Derek Williamson with the Woodstock project about an hour or 2 hours ago. And hopefully we'll have a chance to go walk that site tomorrow. So
Kurt, can I interrupt just a second? This is Linda. Is that the site really kind of across, real near where the food bank and the courthouse annex and the police station is? Is that what you're talking about?
Correct.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Yep.
So Kurt and Annette and Linda, here's my suggestion. The proclamation is not tied, there's no wording about the site. It just talks about what has been done historically and what is intended to be done on July 11th. So I'm optimistic that Kurt, with some help from other people, will be able to provide a site that will work. So let's pass the proclamation, and then if we need to change the date, we could always have a new proclamation passed. That would be my suggestion. Are you okay with that, Kurt?
Yeah, we'd really like to see it continue. It's a great event, and we'll do whatever we can do to help. This caught us off guard as far as the scope and size of the laydown down there, but it's that in turn is also going to be a benefit to the city in the form of grading and drainage improvements following this and the use of that activity down there. So I think Scott was pretty passionate about trying to make it work on that state 80. So, but I should know more tomorrow on that.
Great. Linda, you okay with that?
Yes, I really appreciate all the efforts, and I agree. Certainly don't. There's a lot going on in the city, and we all benefit from that eventually. So, Kurt, keep working on this with us, and we'll. That sounds like at least a potential for a plan. And then, to kind of come back around to where we thought we might be. We have been experiencing and utilizing quite really enhanced safety measures to continue to serve families at food banks. So we've got some practice under our belts as well as everyone else in the city. And we have discussed those safety measures, which of course, when we're able to find the site and bring forward and see what we're going to do, we will communicate those, and not just to advise, but to also really, to get another eye on it to see if there's any areas that we're missing what we should be doing. So I don't want to lose sight of that, because it's still very important that we do that.
I agree. Council, would you please make a motion to proclaim
Mayor, Mayor, if I might, I believe that Dave Holland is on the phone now. I didn't know if he wanted to address the council.
I just
Mr.
want to
Holland.
thank everybody and yeah,
Mr.
Dave
Holland,
Holland
thank you
here.
for joining us.
thank you. I'm learning this to new technology. I'm getting dragged into the 21st century, kicking and screaming. But I just wanted to take a minute and thank everybody for their efforts and continual support. It's blessed so many lives.
Well, we thank you and Linda and all of the people on your board. It's a wonderful project. And the city's very proud of it. As you know, our past mayor, Jackie Amon, used to participate, and many of our staff as well. So thank you for doing this. It's a great project. May I have a motion to proclaim the 11th day of July?
I'd like to make a motion to proclaim the 11th day of July 2020 to be Humanitarian Woodwork Day in the city of McCall and authorize the mayor to sign the proclamation.
Thank you, Melanie.
This is
Mike,
Tom.
second.
Thank you, Mike. A motion has been made and seconded to proclaim the 11th day of July 2020 to be Humanitarian Woodwork Day in the city of McCall and authorize the mayor to sign the proclamation. Now, procedural question, Bessie Jo, do we read the proclamation before we vote, or how does that work?
No, we would vote first, and then if you, the option is whether you can read it or you can just let it be as part of the record. But you can if you decide that you would like to read it, it is read after the motion has been completed. Yeah.
Thank you, Bessie Jo. I appreciate you explaining that to me. May I have a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Holmes,
Yes.
Councilmember Machezik,
Yes.
Mayor Giles,
Yes.
Councilmember Nielsen,
Yes.
Councilmember Sowers,
Yes.
Thank you, council. The motion passes. And Dave Holland and
Yes,
Linda,
sir.
and Linda, thank you, Linda Arbach. Thank you for joining us tonight, and keep up the good work. Keep working with Kurt on the alternate site, and I'm looking forward to hearing how well things go on the 11th of July. Thank you very much.
You're
thank
welcome
you
to
for,
join us.
yeah. Yeah, Dan, thank you very much. I should probably correct the fact that Arbach is my husband's name, but it's not mine. My last name is Klind, Klind, just for the record.
Oh, thank you for clarifying. I appreciate that.
No, it's just, okay. Thank you very much for your time, and I think we'll let you get on with your meeting because we realize that there's a lot going on in the city, and we appreciate all that you're doing.
Thanks
Good
for
night,
joining
thank
us
you.
tonight.
Good night.
Good night. All right, we'll move into the business agenda, and our first item is Agenda Bill 20-168, Housing Advisory Committee member discussion and appointments. I think, Michelle, you're going to lead us in this effort. You're going to lead the discussion, right? So, Michelle, I think you're on mute, if you can hear me.
Got it.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. This is Michelle Grunewald, Community and Economic Development Director at the city. So what is in front of you this evening is the appointments of the 5 members for the newly created Housing Advisory Committee. These positions were advertised in the Star News. And then according to the bylaws, the committee shall consist of the 5 members. They're all 3-year terms, and then each member may serve no more than 2 consecutive terms. They're not required to be a resident, and as you may remember in the bylaws, we included that representation from housing and construction related professions such as real estate, land use law, building and construction, architecture, finance, and other related fields are preferred. So in your packet, you have a list of interested people in the committee, and also included are the letters of interest and resumes. Some of those were received when the packet went out, and some of those came to us later and I think were distributed to you. So you should have all that information in front of you. I have let all the interested parties know that the council would be discussing the candidates this evening, and that we would contact them if you need additional information or you want to talk with them or interview them as part of this process. So you can see we actually received 9 applications, and we actually got a number of people with related backgrounds. So there are some duplications as it relates to real estate agents, but we also have kind of some unique skill sets there too. So really it's an opportunity for you just to review the information, have a discussion, and then direct staff on next steps.
So for example, just to understand process, if we have a discussion this evening, like we're intending on, and because this is a committee that is brand new, we're starting with 0 members and forming a very important committee, we would have the time, for example, if we wanted at a later meeting to do some form of telephone interview, or perhaps in July we'll be able to have meetings with people in the building. But anyway, we could have some process like that if you would help us with that if we wanted to.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. All right. Well, let me poll the council, and Michelle and Bessie Jo, thank you for getting the information together. Some of it we received today, but we've received resumes and information about every candidate, and it's exciting to see the interest and the diversity of candidates. So let me start with Tom, and I'll go through I'll poll each council member to see what their initial thoughts are about all of the people, the group, and what kind of process they would like to see staff help us with.
Wow.
Could you lead off, Tom?
Sure.
Thank you.
I was just weeding through everybody, and I mean, wow, lot of great qualifications. And there's 5 members, is that correct? So
yes.
And we have how many? I was on, because I got some on the I got some email, and then I got some paper. So
Michelle, do we have 9 candidates at this point?
There are 9 candidates at this point.
Okay. Well,
In your packet, there's a summary sheet of the names and their backgrounds, and then, as I mentioned, some of that information was attached and some of it was distributed to you today.
yeah, I mean, Joey, we know Joey, and Tony, I don't know. Robert, I do know. So I guess it's just kind of, I don't know. Everybody is overqualified for what we're doing, so it's kind of great. It's one of those hard decisions where everybody's really qualified. So I think we'll just go around the room and see where everybody goes.
Thanks. Mike, your initial thoughts?
Yeah, I think that it would be helpful to have a question answer type of discussion with folks that are interested. So I do think that would be helpful, just to really understand where people are coming from, their interest, and a little more on their backgrounds. Because I think that it's really important on boards like this, that committees like this, that we have people that are very dedicated to the committee, and that they are going to understand that it's something where you need to be at the meetings. And so we want to have that level of dedication and commitment. The other comment I would have is, I think that because we're fortunate enough to have a number of people that are interested, I think in defining who should be on this committee, it might be helpful to, follow the bylaws and essentially say, well, we need somebody that has a background in architecture. We need someone with a background in building. We need someone with a background in public policy. We need someone with a background in development. We need someone with a background in finance or mortgage related things. And we need someone potentially in real estate, or that might overlap with one of these other items. So I think the key is, because we do have a number of applicants that are interested, which is fantastic, that in choosing those that would make a very productive committee, I think staying focused on what the areas are that we need expertise in, and having a well-balanced group of stakeholders.
Thank you. Thank you, Mike. Melanie, you're next.
I agree with Mike. I think that we know a few of the people individually, and we don't know a few of the people. It's really important to have that conversation, hopefully face to face with them, see how they interact, and hopefully come up with a diverse group that works well together.
Thank you, Melanie. Colby?
Yeah, I agree with Mike as well. In fact, it was actually called out in one of the letters from Ray Crowder. Says, I do request input from you regarding your expectations for time commitments as well as frequency of meetings. If appointed to the committee, I want to have the confidence I will be able to meet your goals, expectations, and schedules. And I think that kind of speaks a bit to what Mike was talking about in some of it. And I guess, we have, some of those are knowns, but obviously we're still creating this as we go. And I also agree too that it would be nice to, if we could have an even wider net, I guess, of skill sets. I think that all the people who applied seem to be pretty well qualified and could add some valuable input. So yeah, I'm not exactly sure where exactly we should start. So
I'm going to throw out a proposal for council to think about, and staff. My thoughts would be, we do what you suggested. What I heard, some really key points tonight from council and from staff are, we've got on paper 9 great candidates. So how about we set up a meeting? It could be a Teams format or even just verbally if they phone in, and they all hear the same 5-minute pitch about, here's the expectations from council and from the city. We're going to have monthly meetings. They'll be an hour long. Whatever the parameters are, try to fill them in on the obligations that Ray Crowder, for example, asked about. And then from there, go down the list of 9 and ask them a couple of pointed questions. And I would suggest, Michelle, that you take the lead on the questions, and that you and Annette then send that out to council and see if they have other questions. And we keep it fairly short and conduct that interview in one night. And then from there, the council could deliberate and narrow it down to 5 people that meet the different specialty areas or criteria that Mike talked about and that are talked about in our charter. I think we could do that in one, like an hour block of time. What's your initial thoughts on that, Michelle? Could you help us structure something like that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a good idea. And one thing I did want to mention is, I mean, this is an unusual situation. We typically don't have more applicants than we have positions, especially this many. So one of the things, regardless of whoever you choose, I think there'll be an opportunity for everyone to be involved. I mean, we can only have 5 official voting members, but they're public meetings, so anybody can attend. Plus, we also have openings on other committees, and so they may be interested in some of those other committees for those that are not selected.
Thank you. Annette, before I poll the council, do you have any other thoughts or other, just other thoughts that you'd like to provide to council about a possible process?
No, I think the process sounds fine. I think we should give them all the same 2 questions ahead of time, so they're prepared, and let them know, they have 3 minutes or whatever, just to kind of keep some structure to the process so it doesn't run really long, and let them be thoughtful in advance instead of just springing the question on them during the meeting. And I'm looking at the upcoming meeting schedule, and we have one more meeting in June that's going to be the virtual format, and then hopefully in July we'll be back to a in-person format. I know Bessie Jo's working on locations where we can be in a bigger space that allows for the social distancing. And so I would like to hear from council if they have a strong opinion on having this in person versus virtual. And I also don't want to wait too long. I mean, we have a open work session slot July 23rd, but that's like 6 weeks out, which seems like a long ways away to me to make them wait. But if the council is okay with the Teams format, the virtual format, we could try to get it together for June 18th. Otherwise, the next logical one would be July 9th. So any input on that in terms of timing and in-person versus virtual would be good.
Thank you, Annette. And I really like your ideas about how to structure it. So let's go with that as the proposal. The ideas that we shared and that Michelle clarified and that Annette gave us some more specifics. I'd like to know if each council member supports that concept. And then I'd like to know whether you would prefer sooner than later. Sooner meaning a Teams meeting, later meaning like early July in person. Tom, would you lead us off?
Yeah, I think early July would be good, unless Michelle has a pressing issue that there's something that we would need to, that this board would need to address right now.
Michelle?
I'm okay with waiting till the first meeting in July. I don't want to push it much further than that because I think there's some specific tasks that they can start working on right away. So I think either the June 18th meeting or the first meeting in July works.
Yeah, I think it would be much better in person. And it's just with the complications of technology, as we've seen already tonight, I don't want to put a candidate at a disadvantage because technology isn't working for them.
Yeah, thanks, Tom. Mike, your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree with the format. I think that's great to have the same questions for each one. Like you say, maybe just a couple questions that each has in advance. And I would lean towards doing it in person in the July 9th meeting.
Thank you. Melanie?
I agree with the format as well, and I would, prefer sooner rather than later. I'd hate to see us lose any of these candidates, but I also think that in person would be great. So.
Well, thank you, Melanie. Colby?
Yeah, I agree with everyone else. It would be nice in person, but I'm totally fine doing it via technology as well. So either way works for me. Thanks for putting in the work to get this together, Michelle. I'm pretty excited about this happening. So I know we haven't gotten a chance to chat about it too much lately. So thanks for doing the heavy lifting. You're awesome.
No problem. What's exciting to me is that I think there's a lot of passion with this group because a number of them keep emailing me asking when the appointment's going to happen. So I know that a number of them are really eager to serve and work on this issue. So that's exciting.
Yeah, and that's kind of why I'm partial to doing the one in June, but I also, in person would be nice too.
So I think it'd be best to do it in person. I think a majority of the council, I think I counted 3 or 4 people that prefer that. I would ask Michelle and Annette then to set that up, let each candidate know that we would like to use this process in early July and get that going so that we don't lose them from being a candidate. And then we look forward to being decisive and getting that going. Is that specific enough direction for you, Annette and Michelle?
Yes.
Yep. Sounds good.
All right. Thank you. Thanks, Council. We'll move on to the next item, which is a request for approval to submit an Economic Development Administration Public Works and Economic Adjustment Assistance Grant for Phase 3. That's Agenda Bill 20-159.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. This is Delta James, Economic Development Planner. A branch of the U.S. Department of Commerce, the Economic Development Administration offers nationally competitive grants under their Public Works and Economic Adjustment Assistant Grant Program. It's to support and foster job creation, economic development, and other investment in economically distressed areas of the United States. McCall's downtown core is located within a federally recognized opportunity zone, so it meets the threshold as being described as an economically distressed area for this grant program. It is a federal grant program. It's quite large in that the average grant award amount is near $1.5 to $1.6 million. That's the median average award amount. It only requires a 20% local match. It is nationally competitive, so it's going to be a tough one to get, but I think it's worth trying for the downtown core phase 3 project that's slated for construction in 2022-2023 timeframe. The fact that this is a federal funded program, if we were given an award, it does drive up the cost of a project a bit because it makes the project subject to federal regulations such as the Davis-Bacon Wage Act. It would increase the project costs in the neighborhood of 20 to 30%, but that would be covered by the grant revenue. And if we were awarded the average grant amount of about 1.6 million, it would be a net benefit to the project in the near $1 million range. I'm happy to answer any questions about the grant program.
Delta, thank you. I'm going to run down through the list. Tom, any questions for Delta?
No, not at this time.
Thank you, Tom. Mike?
I don't have any questions.
Thank you. Melanie?
No questions here. Thank you.
Colby?
Yeah. What specifically is the phase 3 portion of the downtown?
Councilmember Nielsen, phase 3 is the final phase of the road reconstruction and utility upgrades. It's primarily would be located on 1st Street.
Thank you. And we don't have any other economically distressed areas in town that we might be able to apply for funding to complete projects on?
The opportunity zone that is the aspect that qualifies it as economically distressed does extend west from the downtown core all the way over to Whitetail, technically. However, the other benchmarks of this economic development grant state that it needs to support business. It's more competitive in the downtown core because of that. I've been in close contact with our regional Western States Economic Development Administration coordinator, and I've talked to her about what's on our CIP, what projects are coming up, and it's with her advice that the downtown core final phase is probably the most eligible and would be the most competitive of the projects we have in the queue.
Great, thank you. Appreciate those answers.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Delta. Thank you, Colby. Would someone make a motion to approve the submittal of this grant application?
Hey, this is Tom. I'll make a motion to approve submittal of an Economic Development Administration grant application and authorize the mayor to sign all necessary documents.
Thank you, Tom.
I'll second.
Melanie seconded. Thank you. A motion to approve submittal of an Economic Development Administration grant application and authorize the mayor to sign all necessary documents. A motion has been made and seconded. Is there any further discussion from council? May I have a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Sowers,
Yes.
Councilmember Holmes,
Yes.
Mayor Giles,
Yes.
Councilmember Machezik,
Yes.
Councilmember Nielsen.
Yes.
Thank you, council. The motion passes, and we are on to our next agenda bill, which is the rejection of bids on Park Street and Thompson Avenue, that phase 1 contract award. Agenda Bill 20-167. Nathan, are you leading us through this?
Sure. Good evening, Mayor Giles, City Council. Nathan Stewart, Public Works Director. So as the agenda bill proposes, this is a request to reject the bids received for our Park Street and Thompson Avenue reconstruction phase 1 contract. We did the bidding, and unfortunately we only received one bid from Granite Excavation, which was great that they participated. And we were looking forward to some cost efficiencies that might have lended themselves, given that they were already mobilized in town and doing work all summer. But unfortunately, the costs that they provided for this project were much higher than the engineer's estimate. But even more importantly, much more than the city's budget would allow. That was additionally made complicated with the fact that the tourism LOT funding is not guaranteed until the money becomes available. And at this point in time, there's no certainty that that grant money is available. So it's my recommendation that we do reject these bids. We are working on an alternative approach with the Thompson developer that may lend us an opportunity to complete some roadway improvements directly along their frontage, which would be just part of the overall project. It would be the bid alternate 1. But that's the unfortunate news I have to report, and I'm happy to answer any questions or talk about the design if you have any.
Thank you, Nathan. Tom?
No, I don't have any questions at this time.
Thank you, Mike.
No, I don't have any questions.
Melanie?
I'm just curious why there's such a difference between the engineer?
Melanie, I think you said you were wondering about the difference between the engineer's estimate and the contractor's bid price. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah, so this is one of the toughest parts of our job, is to try to anticipate what a public works contractor is going to charge for the work that's done. And these are very detailed plans, very detailed price items. The bid schedule had probably 40 or 50 items. And you know, it has to do with the availability of materials. It has to do with existing stockpiles of those materials, uncertainty in the marketplace of asphalt plants and large, you know, previously planned out scopes of work that these different contractors are doing. We thought we were going to have at least 2 bidders. One of those bidders simply wasn't able to commit to doing all of the work, and so they didn't submit a bid at all. And you know, with Granite, we got a really good price on our Phase 2B project, and that came in below the engineer's estimate. We used those same values as our engineer's estimate for this project, and the numbers were just different. We did meet with Granite to see if there was any opportunity to change the design or do things differently, and there just weren't any opportunities. But if there were, we would have really looked into those. But knowing how cautious we have to be too, with knowing what our revenue projections might be through the end of the fiscal year, it's just, I think it's really not wise for us to move in this direction.
Thank you, Nathan. Thank you, Melanie. Colby, any questions for Nathan?
Yeah, I guess I'd kind of like to get maybe some more details on the bid alternate one, and I guess of what, maybe a little more detail on what you're thinking moving forward.
Sure. So if I can share my screen, I'll try. See, you should see the agenda bill in front of you popping up eventually.
Yep, we got it.
Okay, so I'm going to scroll down and show you. And it's going to take a little bit to generate on your computers. But the first drawing I'm showing you, this is the top of the hill where my cursor is over here. And the first, this is bid alternate 2, which would have taken the road section from the intersection of Park with Thompson up to the top of 4th Street with 2 drive lanes and a sidewalk and bike lanes. And so that's bid alternate 2. And then bid alternate 1 is essentially the work from the intersection of Park with Thompson to the intersection of Ann Street. And the Thompson Place development is required to construct the bike lane, the on-street parking, and the sidewalk. And they also have numerous trenches across that road for all their water and sewer services that they're installing. So they would have to have done new widening of the roadway to accommodate that bike lane, parking lane, and sidewalk, and then also be paving over the trenches. And this section of road is in very poor shape. Gets a lot of use. We're seeing continued increased traffic volumes as people try to navigate around Railroad Avenue in the summertime. So our goal is really to get this portion done if we can. But that's the difference between bid alternate 1 and bid alternate 2.
Got it. Yeah, that's kind of what I thought. I just wanted to make sure I was looking at the same thing. That chunk of road is in pretty rough shape for sure.
Yeah.
And that hill still makes me nervous for pedestrians and cyclists too, especially as you said with the increased traffic through there.
So I think we're ready for a motion from council to reject the bids. May I have a motion, please?
I move we reject the responsive low bid by Granite Excavation for the Park Street and Thompson Avenue reconstruction Phase 1 construction contract.
Thank you, Colby. Is there a
This is Tom.
second?
Second.
Thank you, Tom. A motion has been made and seconded to reject the responsive low bid by Granite Excavation for the Park Street and Thompson Avenue reconstruction Phase 1 construction contract. May I have a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Nielsen,
Yes.
Councilmember Sowers,
Yes.
Mayor Giles,
Yes.
Councilmember Holmes,
Yes.
Councilmember Machesik,
Yes.
Thank you, council. The motion passes. We'll reject those bids. And Nathan, thanks for explaining to us about the backup plan. Appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Our next agenda item is fiber optic agreement with Syringa Networks to use one of our ducts. And I think Chris Curtin is going to lead us through this discussion.
That's correct. Good evening, City Council, Mayor Giles. How's everyone this evening?
We're doing great.
Before you is a request to approve a duct occupancy agreement between the city and Syringa Networks. This is a revisitation after there were some questions by council which have been reviewed and addressed. One of those being a shorter time period to review the agreement before we are able to make changes to it. We've reviewed that with our attorney as well as Syringa's attorneys, and that language has been added. Basically, what it does is it gives us a 5-year window to revisit the contract and make any changes that we would see necessary. This agreement between the city and Syringa gives Syringa rights to one of the 3 conduits that we have available in a section of the city. Basically, that route travels from Park Place through the downtown core and connects up on the other side on the north side of Lake Street down by McCall Real Estate. One of the nice things that Syringa has done for us, in addition to wanting to be partners on this duct occupancy, is that they are going to need to bore across Lake Street in order to get to that McCall Real Estate building, of course. And as part of that, they've given us a very aggressive price on installing a box, one of our J boxes on the north side of Lake Street, giving us a nice access to those buildings over there when we decide if we want to decide to offer services at that point. You're doing that for, I believe, for $500, which is virtually free. I'm happy to answer any questions if anybody has any about this agreement.
Tom, any questions for Chris?
No, nothing at this time.
Thank you. Mike?
I don't.
Melanie?
No, it seems like they addressed all of our concerns earlier, so. No.
Thank you, Melanie. Thanks, Mike. Colby?
They're going to just keep on putting more conduit in for us for our fiber network. Talking about that.
I think that anytime our goals are aligned, that that is something we would discuss.
Thanks. Good work.
Yeah, that's exciting to see that happen. May I have a motion to approve the duct occupancy agreement?
This is Tom. I'll make a motion to approve the duct occupancy agreement with Syringa Networks and authorize the mayor to sign all necessary documents.
Thank you, Tom.
This is Melanie. I second.
Thank you, Melanie. A motion has been made and seconded to approve the duct occupancy agreement with Syringa Networks, LLC, and authorize the mayor to sign all necessary documents. May I have a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Sowers,
Yes.
Councilmember Holmes,
Yes.
Mayor Giles,
Yes.
Councilmember Machezek,
Yes.
Councilmember Nielsen.
Yes.
Thank you, council. The motion passes.
Thank you, council.
And Chris, thanks for briefing us. We look forward to seeing more of that.
Great. Thank you again.
All right. Our next item is a second look at whether we're going to approve or deny the State of Idaho Outfitters and Guides Licensing Board private landowner statement agreement for the Payette Lake Shuttle and Tours, also known as the Thousand Spring Boat Tours LLC. And this is an action item. Yeah. So Kurt, are you leading us through this? Yep.
I am.
We see you on the screen. Thank you.
All right. Good evening, Mayor Giles, members of the council. Kurt Wolf, Parks and Recreation Director for the City of McCall. So this is in front of you again. I got feedback on some of the questions and concerns we had from comments from the public as well as from the council. I've attached their response to those questions and concerns and would be happy to discuss that. This has always seemed a bit unusual, seeing how it's a public boat ramp and that they should have the ability to launch a commercial vessel, whether and why we have to sign it. But according to the Idaho Outfitters and Guides Licensing Board, they're requesting city council signature on this. And they advised us to include just a disclaimer that if they don't have written approval to operate from a private entity, because they are not allowed to operate on publicly owned waterfront properties or docks. So that has been included in there. And again, it just gives this company an opportunity to secure one of only 2 outfitters licenses on the lake. So that's where we're at. I'm happy to answer any questions as it relates.
Thank you, Kurt. Tom, questions for Kurt?
No, I don't have any questions.
Thank you. Mike?
I have comments, but I don't have any questions specifically for Kurt.
What's your comment? Go ahead.
Well, I would say that we received an incomplete application from the applicant, and then we made a list of important questions from council and related to comments that we had from the public that we asked to be addressed. And then in our packet, we have the notes. The applicant responded with what I would consider incomplete and insufficient information to address community concerns. And they state at the time of their responses that they have started, for instance, discussions with Mile High Marina, which they have not, according to the general manager of the marina. So I guess for me, if the applicant's application is incomplete, what could we expect from the operator if we granted permission?
Thanks for that observation.
I mean, I'm just saying that as a general question.
No,
they stated they started discussions with Mile High Marina and they have not done so, which I verified with the general manager of Mile High. I just don't see this as a complete or application that we should open that door.
Thank you, Mike. Melanie, your initial thoughts and or questions?
I just feel like at this point, I don't understand. It feels like we're putting the cart before the horse. I feel like they should have an agreement with a private dock owner before we actually signed off on this. So maybe I'm missing something, but if you could respond to that, Kurt, that would be a question for me.
Again, great. I have the same questions. I was hoping to have better response from the Idaho Outfitters and Guides Licensing Board. I've not received anything since early last week from them with these same questions. So Bill provided comments in that it also seems a bit backwards that why do they even need our signature if this is a public boat ramp? And so I pass those comments on to them, and I apologize. I was out of town up until last night, but I still had no response from them via phone or email. They're working remotely, so that doesn't necessarily surprise me. But in the end, and Bill may want to chime in, but it's permission from a private property owner, and it's not private property. It's a public boat ramp. Bill, are you on the phone?
I am. So, yeah, that was my puzzle, I guess, is why the city was even being asked, because all they're talking about doing is putting the boat in the water and taking it out. And I didn't think we could deny someone the right to use the boat ramp anyway. So I can't quite understand why the Outfitters Licensing Board is requiring this kind of an agreement.
So Bill, I think that question is on all of our minds, all of the council. And before I call on Colby and offer my thoughts, could you clarify? I know we asked this before, and you're tracking it well. Do we have authority? Let's go back to Mike's comments. Do we have the authority to deny this? What's before us, this agenda item?
Well, you can certainly deny something if you don't think you have enough information, if they're unanswered questions. But again, that was why in my discussion with Kurt, that was my struggle. I mean, it's not like they're asking for the permission to tie up at a city dock. They're not asking to connect, a gangway to city-owned property above the high water mark. It's simply to put the boat in the water and take it out of the water using the boat ramp.
If they have not, so a quick follow-up to that, the very pointed question that Mike Machezik posed was, they have not demonstrated, according to Mile High Marina or anyone else, that they have an agreement with a private dock. Can we cite that? And for that reason, are we legally defensible if we recommend denying their request?
So I think what you can do instead is saying that you're not going to consider the application until all the other pieces are in place.
Got it. Thank you, Bill. That makes sense.
Hey, I'm sorry, this is Tom. Bill, I just got a quick question for Bill. Is this, I feel like we're going in a circle and we're putting these people in a circle and of permissions. And is it a requirement that they have a dock? Because can't they just put the boat in, take people for a ride, pull the boat out and leave?
I think they could. What they can't really do is use the dock at the boat ramp for their ingress, egress onto the boat.
Right.
As a commercial enterprise.
Right.
That's
yeah, they would have to.
Can't.
Yeah, they'd have to have something through one of the marinas. Is that correct?
Yeah, they'd have to have some place to embark and passengers. I mean, it seems, I get what you're talking about in terms of not making them chase their tail, which comes first, the chicken or the egg. But it seems to me that this permission to use the boat ramp is the smallest of all of the pieces, all of the things they have to check off.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Bob, can I add something?
Colby, we haven't asked you to weigh in.
Oh, so it sounded like Mike wanted to say something? Go ahead, Mike.
Oh, I was just going to add to that. So if you look at it functionally and practically speaking, I mean, so let's say that, this entity puts their boat in the water. So Bill brought up a couple points there. So how are the people going to get on the boat and get off the boat? Where are they going to use restroom facilities? If they're getting on and off the boat and using the docks at the boat ramp during the summertime, those docks can get busy. And so that's going to have an impact. Where's their trailer going to go? Are they going to go ahead and leave their trailer overnight and not pay the fee to be in the parking lot as is required and is another subject of work discussion, is use of that parking lot or parking on the streets, and that's a big trailer. So I think there are impacts to other city facilities as well as the public that I think that we need to be conscious of. Sorry, go ahead, Colby.
Thanks, Mike. I guess one question I do have regarding the boat ramp is, that belongs to the city, and do we not have any ability to regulate that boat ramp if we decide that we were to want to charge a usage fee or limit the number of boats on that per day?
So I'll let Kurt answer that with regard to some of the funding that was used to build the ramp.
Yeah, thanks. It definitely gets a little tricky there, Colby, if because we've used county waterways monies and state waterways monies as a public boat ramp. I would need to look deeper into that because I've always wanted, it's been on our to-do list as a revenue stream to look at what it would take to charge a launch fee other than the political issue that brings up in the community, but that's easy to work through. So I can circle back around on that. That'll need to be a conversation with IDL and county waterways because they have put significant funds into maintaining that ramp as a public boat ramp.
Got it. Thanks. Yeah, I guess it kind of plays into the bigger picture on the whole lake discussion.
It does. It's definitely at the top of my list to be a part of in this lake capacity study. And I'd like to also kind of address Mike's concerns. We do have the authority. They cannot, Bill had mentioned that they could launch and pull their boat out. Yes, that has an impact on the boat trailer parking lot and that, but I don't believe we have the right to say no to launching there, other than through, if they want an outfitter's license, the IOG LB is requiring it. But we do have the right to regulate and enforce commercial activity on any of our docks. So they can't pull up with a commercial vessel, use the restrooms in a public park if they're providing commercial services. So.
Sure. Yeah, I guess my comments would probably mirror Mike's comments, and in regard to what Bill was saying about this probably being the lowest hurdle here. It would seem if they were serious about pursuing this business or this operation that they would have a fairly specific plan. It's a little bit disappointing to see the response to this that's totally vague. We might have a boat between 20 and 28 feet, there's just a lot of vague stuff in there. And I don't personally feel good about, signing off anything for IOGA to say that's okay. Based just on this business plan, it's not much of a plan. And then I guess the other thing is, were these folks invited to this meeting, or do we have anyone available to answer questions about this? What's the status on that?
They know it's a public meeting. I did talk to them about that. But no, they're not on the line that I know of. I don't know that by denying this application, I think that motion in general, just because we haven't heard back from the IOGLB, I think it doesn't slow down their process with them until they have permission from a private marina or somebody of that nature to operate from. They have reached out to the owner of Mile High. I don't know if they've gotten a response back from them, or at least they've told me they reached out to one of the owners of Mile High. I don't know who the general manager is, but they did reach out to the owner. And last I talked to him, he had not had a chance to get back to him.
So how about we do this then? Someone on council can make a motion to deny the state of Idaho proposal that we have as our recommended action. And then I think Kurt and Bill, we're going to need your help with some documentation. We've discussed it verbally, but I think we need it in the written record for tonight's meeting of why we're denying it. And I believe, go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, Mayor, whatever you can do instead of a denial, if the council chooses, you can simply table the matter until all of the other requirements that are that they're saying they need, like a private agreement with a private dock owner, et cetera, until they've got it all done. And then you'll take up the matter again then.
Good suggestion.
Yeah, that is, Mr. Mayor, I'm sorry. That's what I was going to recommend. I think we should table this and come back when they've got all their pieces together, and maybe if staff could just make sure that all these things are correct, that'd be great.
So point of clarification for from the city clerk, do we need to make a motion to table this? And Bill, what's your thoughts on that?
Mr. Mayor, yes, it'd be a motion to table with instructions to staff to communicate with the applicant as to when you'll take it up again.
Okay, Tom, would you make that motion?
Yes, I'd like to make a motion to table the application. I lost all their words for this. For the State of Idaho Outfitter Guide Licensing Board landowner agreement for Pay at Lake Shuttle and Tours, and request staff to, get with the applicant and figure out all these details.
Is there a second?
Second, Mike.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Tom, for making that motion. A motion has been made and seconded to table the State of Idaho Outfitter and Guides Licensing Board private landowner statement agreement for Pay at Lake shuttles and tours. May I have a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Sowers,
Yes.
Councilmember Machezik,
Yes.
Mayor Giles,
Yes.
Councilmember Holmes,
Yes.
Councilmember Nielsen.
Thank you, council. The motion to table that passes. We are now on to Agenda Bill 20-164, which is a water quality and infrastructure investment. The Idaho Conservation League has a pretty well thought out plan, and they have been asking all cities within Idaho and other local governments to sign a letter on behalf of that position. I believe our packet has the sample letter and all the background information. And this, like my packet, all of the material that we received from ICL is in there. Annette, would you help us through this?
Sure. Thank you, Mayor. So Idaho Conservation League reached out to individual cities with water systems to see if we wanted to sign on to their letter that they are submitting to the federal delegation. And I hope if you had a chance, I assume, to read the letter. Basically, at the federal level, they're looking at a number of infrastructure investment acts, and this letter is specifically advocating for making sure that water infrastructure projects are funded, and that our federal delegation tries to ensure that appropriate funding comes to Idaho specifically. I spoke with or sent the letter and the materials to our public works director and to the water department and asked them their opinion of the need and the federal issues that are happening right now and what they're hearing in their industry and amongst their colleagues. And everyone came back and said that this is super important, especially with Idaho taking on their own DEQ responsibilities away from the EPA recently. And also that the need for training and having qualified future water operator applicants is very high. And so I think, in my opinion, I think it would be fine to sign the letter if, unless you have any issue with joining together with the Idaho Conservation League. But if you'd like, we could also send an independent letter that's not joint with them. As I mentioned in the agenda, Bill, the Association of Idaho Cities was originally approached by Idaho Conservation League, and they decided that it would not be appropriate for them to sign on behalf of all the cities in the state, that each city should consider it independent and make their own choice about whether to sign on with ICL. And so that's why it came to us directly. So I can try to answer any questions you have, but I think advocating for a fair investment into the state of Idaho of federal infrastructure dollars is always a good idea.
Thank you, Annette, for that background. So I would like each council member to share their thoughts. You may have some questions for Annette, and then if you don't have questions or you've got those questions answered, what is your suggested direction to Annette and to me as mayor? Tom, would you lead us off?
Sure. I mean, it looks like something that it would be valuable for the city to be a part of. So I don't know the exact wording for the letter, but because of the other groups that are involved, it looks like a pretty positive venture.
Thank you, Tom. Mike?
Looks to me like there's value in supporting this. Yep.
Thank you. Melanie?
I initially had a concern about aligning with the group specifically, but if Annette's opinion is that it, doesn't leave us with any disadvantage, I would be good with it too.
Thank you. Colby?
Yeah, I feel comfortable signing on with this.
Me too. So do we need a motion, Annette? And
Yes, please. I think that the council can authorize you to sign the letter on their behalf, and then we can get you the link, or we can print it out on letterhead for a hard copy signature and just send it in the mail the normal way. But yes, I think a motion for you to be approved to sign the letter would be good.
Thank you, Annette. Council, would you make that motion and someone second it?
Sure. This is Mike. I would make the motion that the mayor sign the letter of support.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Colby. Motion has been made and seconded to provide direction to the mayor to sign a letter of support. And this is in relation to to be sent to the Idaho congressional delegation regarding water quality infrastructure investment. May I have a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Machesik,
Yes.
Councilmember Nielsen,
Yes.
Mayor Giles,
Yes.
Councilmember Holmes,
Yes.
Councilmember Sowers,
Yes.
Thank you, council. The motion passes. We are now on to the 4th of July and the restrictions that we talked about at our last meeting with the alcohol restrictions. So, Annette, are you leading us through this, or is Justin, our chief of police, going to lead us through it, or how do you want to do this?
Well, I think either myself or Bessie Jo can do it. The resolution that's attached to your agenda bill in the packet is the language that will need to be adopted per our city code to implement that restriction, and it just includes the times and dates that the council recommended at your last meeting. If you have questions about the restriction or enforcement or the MOU with our partner agencies or anything, I think Justin's on the line to answer those questions. But in terms of the resolution itself, I believe Bessie Jo has put into the proper format the authorizing language for you to adopt to put those in place.
Thank you, Annette. So real quickly, I'm going to run through each council member. If you have last minute questions as Annette addressed that. Tom?
No questions.
Mike?
No questions.
Melanie?
No, not at this time. Thank you.
Thanks, Melanie. Colby?
I do not have any questions.
Thank you, Colby. I don't have any questions, Annette. So I would look for a motion to approve resolution 20-09.
This is Mike. I'll make a motion to approve resolution 20-09, implementing an alcohol restriction within Legacy, Davis, Art Roberts, Rotary, and Brown Parks from 12 a.m. July 3rd through 11:59 p.m. July 5th, 2020, and authorize the mayor to sign all necessary documents.
Thank you, Mike. Is there a second?
Second, Colby.
Thank you, Colby. A motion has been made and seconded to approve resolution 20-09, implementing an alcohol restriction within Legacy, Davis, Art Roberts, Rotary, and Brown Parks from 12 a.m. July 3rd through 11:59 p.m. July 5th, 2020, and authorize the mayor to sign all necessary documents. May I have a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Machesik,
Yes.
Councilmember Nielsen,
Yes.
Mayor Giles,
Yes.
Councilmember Holmes,
No.
Councilmember Sowers,
No.
Thank you, council. The motion passes. So we are on to a late breaking discussion. When I say late breaking, we just found out, the city did. We had a call last week. So the title of this agenda bill is reimbursement discussion for cities that have police departments. And there is no need for action, an action item tonight, because there's the deadline to decide whether our city wants to participate in this recommended policy action. The the governor's going to announce it in the legislature next week, and we don't have to make a decision until the middle of July. So that's the good news. But Annette and I and Bessie Joe as the acting city manager last week, and Linda Stokes, we were on a call to get briefed on it, and we will try to share with you what this idea is that was hatched in Boise by some policy people. So would you like me to lead off? Or do you have some prepared statements, Annette? You did go ahead.
No, I don't. I think Linda's on the line though, and I believe she might be able to help with informing the council about what this program is about.
Great. Linda, could you summarize the idea?
I could if I can figure out how to unmute myself. So anyway, sorry. Here's my notes. So basically, give me a second. I'm sorry. Okay, so last Friday, Bob and I attended, Mayor Giles and I attended a conference call with the mayors and the governor's office. I do believe that's who that was.
Yes.
Bob. Okay. And they have, the state has allocated an additional $200 million to cities and counties or to Idahoans for potential property tax relief. So they are looking to implement this program whereby, so let me back up a step. So the Treasury has allowed for CARES Act funding to be used to cover payroll related expenditures for public safety and public health. And that in the public safety realm, that includes police departments, firefighters, and those kinds of, and EMS services. Maybe not firefighters, but EMS services for sure. So they've been working with the Treasury to make sure that this was allowable, covering all their bases so that the funds are used appropriately, that we learned today. And so they've come up with this program to cover qualified payroll expenses for local governments. So they're currently working through finalizing the process. The proposed implementation would be working in conjunction with the CFAC committee. So cities and counties would file their intent to participate by July 17. And so in that intent, we would provide them with an estimate of our taxes or of our salaries from March 1st through December 30. And in order to be eligible to get reimbursed for those expenditures, the city would then forego taking any increases, either foregone or 3% for the next fiscal year. And those expenditures for public safety would be reimbursed through to the city from the CARES Act. And then the amount that we would forego or that we would be eligible to be reimbursed from the CARES Act would then be provided to the taxpayers as property tax relief. And we have some time to make that decision. There's impacts to the budget as far as the new construction. There would be an impact for that because that would lower our levy rate. And when we get the new construction for fiscal 2022, the way that that's calculated is the previous year's levy rate is applied to the new construction. So that's an impact. by not taking the foregone, it is allowed to be rolled into, I mean, by not taking the 3%, it's allowed to be rolled into our foregone, which we would then still have available to us, but through the normal process of through resolution and as far as through the rules that the state legislature has adopted by adopting a resolution with our intent to take foregone. But it does not change our basis. So our 3%, so it's only for 1 year, our 3%. So the 3% is calculated on the highest of the last 3 years tax levy. So our base for calculating next year's 3% is not impacted. So we would complete our process, and on or before September 20th, we would notify the state tax commission of the amount of our tax relief, and the tax bills that go out will then show a tax relief to the taxpayer, and in which they would receive in late November, and then in December, the city would receive, should you choose to participate, the city would receive a lump sum check from the CFAT or from the CARES Act for our qualified payroll expenses for our local law enforcement. And that would be in the amount of 100 of the amount of our tax relief plus 3%, which is to help cover administrative costs of the program.
So Linda and I and Bessie Jo, we were throwing out some numbers, but to make this kind of real, big picture, we used the example of suppose in our budgeting process, we identified for this CARES Act, March 1st from March 1st through December 30th, that we would qualify for federal dollars of about $500,000 for the police force. And if the state agreed that that could be legally done and tracked and monitored, then the idea is by December, all of us that are property tax payers, we would share in that $500,000 would then flow back to property tax relief in the form of a credit. So we wouldn't, it's not like we're getting federal dollars and then all of a sudden we have a windfall. It would be neutral. We would still fund the police force the way we envisioned in our budget. It would be funded with, part of it anyway, would be funded with federal dollars. And if it amounted to the example we talked about of $500,000, then that would be returned. The $500,000 would go back to the collective of all the property taxpayers. There's a lot of details that we don't know. We've asked a lot of questions and they're working on it, but let's just pause there, and I'd like to hear whether you have any interest in us participating in this. Tom, what's your thoughts?
I don't know. I'll listen to everybody else.
Okay. Mike?
What would be the downside?
The downside, very good question, and Linda addressed that really well, but there's, just to be real blunt, you can't take the 3%. And we as a council have not made that decision yet. We've asked Linda and staff to develop a budget alternative with 3%. Under this proposal, you would not be able to take the 3% or the foregone for 1 year. This good question.
Yes, and I want to remind everybody, the other downside is our the amount of the levy rate would be decreased for fiscal 2021. So any new construction values that are available to us for fiscal 2022 will then be calculated at a lesser rate than had we not participated and provided the relief. So depends on.
And Linda, I presume we'll be able to quantify that, like in a couple of weeks, you'll be able to tell us, is that $500,000, $300,000, or is it $50,000? The difference.
Unfortunately, the way that the new construction roll works is anything that has come on the tax rolls as of December 31st, the year prior. So as of December 31st, 2020, that amount will be our new construction, or as of December 31st, 2019, that is our new construction for 2021. So I think I've got that right. Yes. So it would lag a year behind. So
okay, Melanie?
Well, I guess I have the same question as far as, the downfall, but it sounds like, determining the difference between what would potentially, come to us, even though it's a wash, and then what the downside would be, and I get that we can't figure that out, but we also have to think about the fact that if the mill levy goes up, then likely our construction costs will go up in town. So, are we really benefiting our taxpayers at that point? Are we, or is it all going to come out in the wash? I don't know the answer to that yet.
Yeah, I don't think any of us know. No, there's a lot of stuff we got to figure out.
Yeah.
Colby?
Yeah, it sounds like we need a little bit more information.
Yep, I think we need a lot more. But I wanted to make sure everyone was aware this is something it's an opportunity. It does have some risks, as we've discussed. We got to find out a lot more about it. But there'll probably be some cities doing this. And so if we do a good analysis and we decide not to, that's the important thing, that we make an informed decision in July. And we have time to do that. And I know that Linda has a good plan with her staff to help us get some of that information together. I think that's about as far as we can go on that. Thank you for letting us put it on the agenda, and thank you, council, for hitting you cold with that.
Yeah, if I could just add on, Mayor, I believe there are a lot of different opportunities for funding that are going to be coming at us fairly quickly as a result of the federal allocation to the state of Idaho. And this is one of those. There are some other investment strategies that the governor's team is looking at, including how to help finance broadband expansion or installation in areas. And so I think that the council is going to hear many more of these ideas come forward out of the governor's working group at the state level, where they're trying to think of the best way to take this funding that arrived and get it strategically invested across the state in a fair way that's going to have a bang for the buck and also provide benefit to, individual residents and communities. And so they've been very creative in trying to think about what's the best way to move this money around and actually have a positive impact on our economy and the people that live in Idaho. So it's been a very interesting process to follow. And we'll be hearing more about the broadband opportunity as well. And all of these are going to have fairly tight time frames for cities to respond about participation. So I just want to plant that seed that it's likely that we may get some more information coming to us through the Association of Cities on other potential opportunities in addition to this one that we'll have to get the council to weigh in on and see if you want to participate. So I think his staff is doing a really good job of trying to, again, be strategic and thinking about how to invest this both in the private sector and the public sector, you know, as best they can.
Yeah, I agree. I think they're being legal and creative and trying to not send money back, but invest it here. So let's continue as a council to be open-minded, critical, ask the hard questions, provide feedback, and we'll see where this leads us. But I appreciate having the discussion, and we'll look for more information. And Annette, thanks for giving us kind of the bigger picture, things that you're hearing about. That makes sense. So let's move on to the COVID-19, the general COVID-19 update that we do each meeting.
Okay, Mayor, I believe Chief Williams is on the line and he's prepared a report for you.
Thank you, Chief.
Is that cue the police time?
Yep.
Okay. Good evening, Mayor, Council. Justin Williams, Chief of Police, City of McCall, here to give council briefing reference COVID-19 for June 4th of 2020. The last council meeting that we had was on 5/21, and at that date there were 2,506 infections in the state of Idaho that were documented. Currently we sit at 2,990. We are in stage 3 of Idaho rebounds, the second week of stage 3, which runs May 30th through June 13th. As a reminder, city facilities are open. The protocols were established and processes were put in place to ensure the safe environment for both staff and customers. Remote operations are winding down for city employees. More and more employees are re-entering into the workforce and into the physical locations. At-risk employees are still staying home at this point in time, and non-essential travel for the state has been allowed. Business update is that most of the businesses in town are open, inclusive of restaurants, bars, salons, and things of that nature. I believe that also theaters were allowed to open up as well in some of the larger venue locations. We are seeing more people in town, higher volumes of out-of-town traffic, visitors, recreators. The golf course has been very busy the last 2 weeks, and so we are expecting for that to continue and only increase throughout the summer. Currently, out-of-state persons entering the state of Idaho are no longer required to perform the 14-day self-quarantine. We're continuing to coordinate with the Valley County EOC and their public information officers with the help of Aaron Greaves on that aspect of it. And we're entering into discussions as to the standing down of the OCs and when that will come about after stage 4. As usual, we're planning for the next stage, and all personnel will return to work in stage 4, which will run beginning June 13th for 2 weeks. And so we anticipate a full opening with all employees will be back in the buildings on June 15th. Kurt Wolf has developed the plans with the assistance of the EOC command staff, and those policies and updates for personnel are being implemented and readied for the implementation on the 15th of June. During that time, we will continue to social distance in the wearing of personal protective equipment when it's necessary. We will determine the necessity and continuation of the EOC and its staff during stage 4. And as I stated last time, I will remain the incident commander until it is completely dissolved of need. And we will continue to work throughout the summer, as you've just found out about the reimbursement funds that will be coming. So we will actively engage with Linda Stokes and her staff to ensure that we make appropriate requests in a timely manner. And that's where we currently sit for COVID-19. If you have questions, please let me know, and I'll be happy to answer any of them that I can.
Thank you, Chief, for that overview. Tom, do you have any questions for Justin?
None at this time. Thanks, Chief.
Mike?
I do not have any questions.
Thank you. Melanie?
None here. Thank you.
Colby?
No questions. Yeah, nice work.
Thank you, Justin. That's a great overview, and I would like to echo what Colby said. You've done a great job helping us these last few months. I really appreciate it. The city really appreciates it.
Thank you, sir. We've put together a really good staff that's worked diligently, long hours, many days, many weekends to come through this with the colors that we've come through it with, how effective we've been. We've had great leadership from the top. We've had great support from you and the rest of council as well. And it's been a team effort, and we're coming down the stretch towards the end of the finish line. And so we will see how things go from here. But I appreciate the vote of confidence, and I'll pass that along to our staff as well.
Please do. We would appreciate it. Annette, would you help us and Bessie Joe with the upcoming meeting schedule review?
Sure. And if I could just add to the COVID update real quick before we get to that, if you don't mind. There are a couple of groups that are still meeting and thinking up creative ideas for how we work with our visitors and residents as it gets busier and busier. And so we are working with, I may have mentioned this last time, but we are working with St. Luke's to get hand washing stations installed at various parks and public locations. So that's coming together. And then we have a small group that's working on whether we can acquire through some private donations, some picnic tables or other seating areas around downtown to promote folks who are getting their food to go or curbside, I guess, and having a place to eat, since the restaurants have limited seating space indoors right now. So we're trying to figure out ways we can utilize our public facilities and some private interest, I guess, to create those spaces and appropriate distanced atmosphere for people to enjoy downtown area and still be safe. And so that's been very interesting. I'm sure you've read about how other larger cities are closing entire streets and setting up basically restaurants in the street. For us, that's really hard to do because we don't really have a restaurant row per se, and we can't close 3rd and Lake Street, obviously, for long periods of time. So we're trying to think of other solutions for outdoor seating for our restaurant establishments. So that should come together here pretty soon as well. So I don't know if anyone has heard anything out in the community about any of that type of activity or have any questions about that, but we are trying to come up with some ways to accommodate. And then I had a couple of questions from some community members about whether the city's prepared if we get a spike or an actual outbreak here, since we haven't had much activity with the cases here. And I'll just remind the council that we do have, our team in place if we need to get them activated again. You've already authorized me with that emergency powers ordinance if I need to issue a city public health order independent of the governor's office, and we would work with Central District Health to put whatever that is together if we need to put anything in place to respond to an outbreak. And we've been certified at the state to receive our reimbursements for any costs related to COVID response. So I feel like we're really well positioned if something does spring up here with everybody visiting, that we can address it. So.
Thank you, Annette. Council, any questions for Annette on any of those topics related to COVID-19? Tom?
None at all. Thank you.
Mike?
None, thank you.
Melanie?
No questions here. Thanks.
Colby?
None from me.
And I don't have any questions either, but thanks that was really interesting information, and it's encouraging to hear some of the innovative ideas about the restaurants and the outdoor seating, as well as those other ideas. Thanks for sharing all of that.
You're welcome.
Let's move on to the upcoming meeting schedule.
All right. So your next meeting, June 18th, and that is again a virtual meeting. We don't have a specific work session yet that I'm aware of, unless someone has reached out to Bessie Joe and she wants to add something there. But we did tentatively schedule a discussion with you about the results from the library bond measure. The Library Board of Trustees has their meeting June 18th at 9 a.m. that day, and I think they'll probably discuss it as well. So I just wanted to touch base with you and see if you would like that to happen on the 18th, and you know, what kind of information you would be interested in receiving from us regarding that. And then June 19th, as you've already scheduled, is the budget work session. And so Linda will be fleshing out that agenda more fully and getting that out to everybody. And then we talked about July 9th, we'll block out an hour for the interview process for the Housing Advisory Committee. And then I believe we'll start seeing more planning and zoning items coming up that aren't on here yet, because I know they've had a couple of meetings now. And I think that's about it. Unless there are new items that council would like to get on the agenda from your perspective. We're sort of in a holding pattern on the Midas Gold draft environmental impact statement. I think the latest I heard now is August. So eventually that will come back on your agenda, probably multiple times, to discuss and firm up what kind of comment we want to put in. So that's still out there. And I believe now that the COVID issue is starting to settle down, we'll probably get our public hearing scheduled for the all hazard mitigation plan, because that document was almost finished when this happened. And so I think once Juan Bonilla over at the Donnelly Fire Department, who is the county's emergency manager and was heading that up, I think once he has a chance to pick that back up, we'll need to schedule that and get it turned into FEMA. So does the council have any items they would like to see?
Tom?
Not at this time.
And are you good talking about the library on the 18th at our next meeting?
Oh, yes. I think one thing that we talked about a long time ago around the library time was the building out there, 299 South 3rd, the old labor building. And I didn't know if that might enter back in as something for Parks and Rec or somebody to look at as a possible space.
Okay.
Thank you, Tom. Mike?
Yes, I think that putting the discussion regarding the library on the next meeting is great. And then I had one other question, which might be for Justin or Kurt, but it totally separate from other items. But with regards to the, for lack of a better term, the marina area parking lot, I just wanted to check in. Are we looking at enforcing that this year, or as far as the fee area there, or do we have any information? I don't think it necessarily needs to be an agenda item, and certainly I could ask either of those, either Kurt or Justin, but I just wanted to check in on that, because now that it is a fee area, it doesn't appear that it's being policed. that's, what would be the way to go about that? And should I just ask one of those gentlemen?
Yeah,
We can.
I was
Go
just
ahead,
going to
Betsy.
say that Justin and Kurt have both left the meeting, so that could be something they could answer at a later time, I suppose.
Well, I think what we can do is I can talk to them about including, well, we could either do an update on June 18th, just a written update, information only type of thing, or they could schedule a discussion item for you. Either way, but yeah, we can definitely get that information together for you, no problem. And my preference is when a counselor would like information like that all 5 of you get it. So I think the best way to do that is just have it in your packet.
Yes.
So that everybody gets the same information.
And that's a twofold question too. It's one, it's related to the parking lot because currently there are plenty of people that are already leaving trailers there that I don't know whether they're paying fees or not, but just to address that subject, just because of congestion there and based on last weekend, we could have a busy summer with people staying more local. And then the other question related to that that I would have is as it relates to, for instance, like the Cheap Thrills trailers filling up space in that parking lot and along Roosevelt. So I guess just bringing that up for discussion or information, or I don't know how other council members think on that one, but it's just something that now that we're getting into summer, that's probably worth addressing.
Yeah, we've talked about it every summer I've been here.
Yeah.
So I think it's something that we can definitely bring forward. And I know Kurt has worked extensively with Cheap Thrills, and they recently provided us with their operations plan to comply with Central District Health guidelines and things. So I think we can easily do a conversation with council about all of those topics. No problem.
Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Mike. Melanie.
I'm really good, actually. I see everything I want to see there for now, and yeah, it's all good.
Thank you. Colby?
Yeah, I think I'm good.
Thank you, Colby. I'm good with the schedule and what we discussed for upcoming meetings. So I would look for a motion to adjourn, please.
Motion to adjourn, Mike?
Second, Melanie.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Right.
Thank you, everyone. Good meeting, good discussion tonight. We are adjourned.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Good night.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thanks, everyone.